Hello and welcome back to another episode here in my kitchen. I'm going to be making my go-to vegan recipe that I have made, I would say, over 100 times in my life. I love this recipe so much that I just keep a tab open in my internet browser on my phone, and that brings me to the lovely website where I found this recipe years and years ago. The website's called Cookie and Kate. It has loads of vegan and vegetarian recipes. I'll link the recipe in the description box below so you can try it out too. As a side note, if you're wondering what this is not part of the recipe. This is a beet smoothie that I made for myself to enjoy while I'm cooking up this mujadara. If you want to know how to make this tasty beet recipe, go ahead and check out my previous vlog. A quick summary of this recipe. Mujadara is a classic Arabic recipe featuring cooked lentils and rice, caramelized onions, herbs, and yogurt. I don't make this with yogurt because vegans don't eat dairy products. You can play around with some of the things that you put on top of the recipe. For example, I love sriracha. You can also put red pepper flakes, I think, on top of this. I always reach for the sriracha because I love just dousing this dish in a lot of hot sauce. I'll run through the ingredient list super quickly. There's 4 cloves of garlic. If you know anything about me, I always include more cloves than what's listed in the recipe. I'll be using 2 of these bay leaves. They're not meant to be eaten, but they add a ton of flavor into, say, like a soup, a sauce, or in this case, the rice and lentils that you're cooking. You just have to make sure to either pick out the bay leaf before you serve the dish to anyone, or if you're eating it and you know that there's bay leaves in it, just make sure when you're eating, eat around the bay leaf and don't accidentally crunch into it. This recipe includes one of my all-time favorite spices, cumin. There's 1 tablespoon of it in here. There's salt, there's pepper, there's of course rice. I'm a little bit bad and I like to use white rice. It's still good for you, but it doesn't have as much fiber as brown rice, which is what's listed in the recipe. I figured that this is such a wholesome recipe that swapping out the brown rice and putting in white rice instead is probably still okay. I'll be using a lot of water in this recipe. I actually have my Brita filter over here. It's so heavy, but I poured this ahead of time so that, you know, the water could be filtering and I would have 5 cups just ready to go. And then there's the star of the show, these beautiful lentils. You can get them for super cheap. This is a staple of my pantry. I don't think I have ever lived anywhere and not had lentils on hand. What makes this recipe so insanely delicious is the caramelized onions that you put on top of the rice and lentils. What you do is you take 2 onions and you cut them super thinly, and then you take a good amount of this olive oil, put it in a skillet, and you have these sliced onions just reducing down and caramelizing. Essentially, there's 2 things going on with this recipe. You have the skillet with the onions that are cooking down, caramelizing on one side, and then you have the boiling 5 cups of water, and then you add the rice, the lentils, the spices, and you know, that's simmering away. And then at the end, you put them all together. I'm gonna get started slicing these onions so that I can get them on the stovetop, caramelizing in the saucepan, and then I will move to the water with the rice and the lentils and everything else. Alright, the onions are sauteing. Honestly, it's not that hard to prep the rest of the ingredients. You measure out 1 cup of this rice. The recipe also says to measure out a cup of these brown lentils. Here's the cup of rice. And then to get the rice started, you actually pour out the 5 cups of water. Before I can actually cook it, I have to prep some of the things that are gonna go into the big soup pot where the rice will cook. I've got the rice all poured out into the cup, and I'm just gonna set it over to the side. And then I will measure out a cup of these brown lentils. And the way that I like to clean the lentils is to put the lentils into this mini sieve and then just kind of like rummage through it, look for any little stones or stems or anything that might have gotten caught in the bag. I'm not seeing anything, so I'm gonna go ahead and just run this sieve under some cool tap water. They're looking ready to go, didn't see any debris. And now what I'll do is get the cloves of garlic chopped up and put onto this plate. I'm realizing I forgot to say what day it is and the time and all that info at the very beginning of this vlog. It is Sunday, January 14th. It is 6:30 in the evening. And it's MLK weekend, so I don't have work tomorrow. That is it for the garlic. All I have left here is all of the peels. I'm gonna get all this cleaned off and then get the water rolling so I can get to cooking the lentils and the rice. I think I said earlier that the lentils were the star of the show, but honestly, I'm gonna change what I said before and declare that these onions are the star of the show. Now that the ingredients are prepped and ready to go, I'm gonna bring you over to the stovetop so you can see everything coming together. The time has come. I finally get to eat this beautiful mujadara. It's looking great. So are the caramelized onions. I'll bring all of it over here, dish it up, and show it to you before I feast. This finished cooking just a few minutes ago, so it is quite hot. I might need to let it cool off on the plate for a few minutes before I actually try to take a bite and hopefully not burn myself. I decided to light this cute little tea light candle. This was a present from Rachel Gore. If you're watching this, Rachel Gore, thank you very much for the beautiful home decor. Before I forget, let's take a close-up look at these gorgeous, gorgeous caramelized onions. I cook them almost to the point of burning. Man, these things are so good. It's wild to see how much the onions shrink down when they get caramelized. Let's get this dished up. All right, I'm gonna be very generous with these caramelized onions because they are my favorite part of this dish. Let's just load it up. And I love the color that sriracha gives to really any dish. This recipe never disappoints. That's everything for this episode. I hope you enjoyed watching me make one of my all-time favorite recipes. As I said before, the link to the recipe is in the description box. Definitely try this out. You will not regret it. I especially love making this recipe in the winter time. It's mid-January in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we are going through a brutal cold snap. The wind chill today is minus 22. It's ridiculous. When things get this frigid in Minnesota in the deep, dark winter months, this is exactly the type of thing you need at home. Just a nice warm meal with a little bit of spice and some cute candlelight to go with it. Stay tuned for more veg content on this channel. I'll see you in the next one.